I need a to-do list.
Yes.
Because then you're not so self-critical.
Yeah.
It gives you room to grow also, because you start to balance better, I think, with a to-do list, right? I want one. I'm going to get one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great nuggets. So I know we're here to talk about how technology has an influence on business.
Yes.
And so with that being said, how do you see technology having a positive influence on business?
Okay. So my general perspective on technology is that it's neutral, right?
Okay.
The technology is neutral. What people do with it becomes positive or negative.
Yes.
So when it comes to your business, right, technology, number one, can help you with networking. Right? People that you've never met face to face who support you and support your endeavors, like, can now find out about you and do that super easy. With that, we were talking about video conferencing earlier between text and email. At one point, I had partners in London and partners in Korea, and I just set up my phone for the different time zones and all these places, which is also technology.
Exactly.
Right? I think I was on Facebook complaining about how I'm up all night because I've got these people all over the world I need to talk to, and someone was like, "Oh, well, you know that like Google Calendar like has this extra like add-on that you can add that'll tell you in the margins the time zone and all these places." I'm like, oh my God, it changed my life.
Right.
So technology can make you more efficient, right? It can make your work more enjoyable. It can increase your networking, and all of that is super awesome. And for that, I'm like, yay, technology.
Exactly. Now, technology does all these great things, and used correctly, it can really expand your business, like you said, globally. You can go from having this little small store to having a huge virtual store of whatever your business is. And so on the other side of the street, what do you find to be some of the drawbacks of technology?
I think one of the major drawbacks is the people who have audiences that are everyone, right? Because the world is your oyster through the internet. And you're like, well, yes, this is going to be awesome for everyone. You're like, well, just because you can reach everyone doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And I think technology encourages you to think that you should. Also, if you're not discerning about the information that you get online, you can fall into all kinds of pitfalls. I mean, whether it's like email scams or just bad advice online, or maybe it's not bad advice necessarily, but it's bad advice for your business. Right? But because it's a business blog you read, you're like, oh, this sounds like a good idea. I'm going to sink all my money into it. Right? It's not a good fit for my model. So if you're not discerning that way, it can be problematic. It can be a grand distraction. You know, there are a lot of people that are building a lot of media so they can have access to technology, or building a lot of social media, but there's no product, right? You're just getting distracted with all the bells and whistles, but you actually like don't have a thing to promote. And so that can be problematic, not having a boss, and just, it's the rabbit hole. I mean, some days it's awesome and some days not so much. Like I was supposed to be researching onboarding, and now like I'm researching artificial intelligence. How did that happen?
You distract yourself almost, right?
Yeah. And then also, if you put too much of your ideas out there too soon to the wrong audience, someone else can build it better and faster.
That's very true.
Right? Especially if you are not like consistently putting your work in day by day. I mean, I don't know that there are people scouring the internet wanting to steal your idea. But if it's a great idea and you're not building it, and someone else sees that you've got this facade of it on the internet, it's good business for them to take it and build it better and faster. Like, you can't really be mad at them about that.
Right.
So that's also
so what
another
you're
pitfall.
actually doing is you're their template.
Yeah.
You don't want to be just someone's template,
Yeah.
you know. And because there's room for everyone, and like you said, everything, if you're not focused on what your message is, you may put an idea out there that is someone's focus. And they go, wait a minute, then all I need to do is this 3 things or this 5 things. I'm going to do it. And they run with it. And because you're all over the place, you're just not.
Yeah. Because, you know, my students, I have them build apps for one of my classes, and what if someone steals their idea and does it better? I'm like, okay, then you learn from how they did it better, and then you improve your original idea.
Exactly.
That's how business works.
Right.
You know? But you've got to be steadily working. And if you're not, like, you just have your idea out there, but you're sitting around talking about it and not doing any work, then it'll be problematic for you.
Yeah. Now, the internet has this other thing that I've had to learn how to manage, and that's the fact that it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's great because, like you said, you can be talking to someone, you know, on the other side of the world any day of the week at any time. But it can be problematic if you don't set some type of boundaries. So can you speak to that a little bit? I know it's a broad question, but.
Yeah, I teach my students, we call it spillover, right? This idea that like your work life through the internet is spilling over into your family life, and can also work the other way, right? Sometimes the family life can spill over to the work life through the internet, but I think it's most problematic when the work doesn't end.
Right.
So I tell people it's very important that you let people on your team know how they should communicate with you. And I'm better at this with my students than I am with my actual like team for Loveline. So with my students, it's on the syllabi. Like I don't do email after 4 p.m. on Friday to the weekends.
Okay.
So you'll get your response like starting 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Like just don't even try. Like it's not a thing.
I'm not looking.
I'm not looking. There's
Right.
there's no email. And I don't give students my phone number, so there's never any texting. Like I tell them, don't call me. I'm not calling you back.
Right.
Like these are my boundaries. There are other professors that I prefer that you call me instead of email. Right. But unless you tell people, they're not going to know how to communicate with you.
Exactly.
So my programmer and I were trying to find a new way to communicate, and we were changing systems. I was like, listen, but I need to know how to stalk you. He was like, what? I was like, no, I need to know like when you're online. So if I have a last minute question, I'm like, oh, he's online and I can hit you up.
Right.
Because right now, like I'm just like scouring all your social media to see when you post it. And he was like, well, I like Google Hangouts because it's on my phone and it's easy for me to see, and it shows up, when you last logged in. I was like, that's great. So he's the only person I use Google Hangouts with. I have another friend that really likes WhatsApp. Right. So because she likes WhatsApp, then I use WhatsApp to talk to her in that way.
Right.
So you have to let people know, like if I text you, then I kind of expect a more immediate response than I email you. But I have to tell you that so that you know. Right. So I tell people, if you email me, like don't expect a quick turnaround. Text, I guarantee you it'll be about 24 hours. Right. So once you've set your expectations, people know how to communicate with you, then they know when you're online and when you're off. And when you're totally unplugging, you let people know, I'm unplugging. We're good to go.
Exactly. And then you're actually setting a line of respect on both sides, because like for me, I know that texting me is the best way to get in contact with me. So I say that up front, text me, and you'll get an immediate answer. And, between these hours and these hours, I'm available. If you text me or call me after this time, I'm not going to call you back. I'll call you the following day. And it actually, I think it relieves anxiety because there is an expectation set, but you have an answer to the expectation that's set.
Yes. And again, we were talking about accountability,
yes.
Right? So if you let people know and you all agree in your communication contract that this is how you're going to talk to someone, if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, then you're within your rights to be like, hey, we said that this would be a 24-hour response. It wasn't a 24-hour response. Like, what's going on? Do we need a new contract? Is it emergency now?
And I like
Should
that.
I panic? But you said this. You said this is what you wanted,
That's
and then
right.
you didn't deliver, so now we have a problem.
Right, exactly. And I like that communication contract. So listeners, in your business, always have communication contracts with your customers, with the people you have to interact with, be it media, whoever you have to deal with. Let them know your hours of availability, and also, figure out what hours you need to be available and come to a happy medium. That way, everyone's on the same page.
Yes, and actually what I do with my team is we use Google Forms, and I have these questions in the communication contract, like when do you want to be contacted, like when is your work schedule, like when do you expect it to change, when is your family time, and everyone fills it out. Google Forms is awesome. You get this cool little spreadsheet and pie graphs, and you know when people are available, and then I summarize that. I'm like, all right, to the team, here's what we agree on. Here are the 5 bullet points. Like here's a link to the Google contract in case you forgot what you said.
Right.
And then we're all accountable that way.
Exactly.
So that's a very practical way to get all of that information in one place.
Exactly. And then it's not so much being a dictator. No, you said this. We agreed on this together. So let me just send it back to you so you can see what you
can always
said.
reference it.
You can always reference it, know where we're at.
And if you need to change it, then just let us know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's empowering on everyone's part. I love this conversation. So as we're talking about technology and how it can make the workspace better, how do you feel it has an effect on finance? Because when you're starting your own business, a lot of time you have limited funds. So how do you see technology having an impact on the financial aspect of starting a business or, moving your business forward?
Yeah, I think the what we call them, like financial tech productivity apps are super awesome, right? Ways for you to manage your money, whether it's QuickBooks or Zero Gravity or things like that. Like you can get your nice, neat profit loss sheets by typing everything in.
Right.
I mean, Excel is also super awesome for that. Like if you're not ready for the big boys, you can still set up a spreadsheet for yourself. Being able to have all of your different accounts accessible online is also really convenient and really important. And then, financial literacy is not something that gets taught in a lot of households.
It really isn't.
Especially I know in my household, like growing up, like African American of color, like it was kind of the in the mattress strategy. You just save some for a rainy day, but that's it. So the internet is a great place to catch up on that financial literacy if you didn't grow up with it and didn't have it, right? Because sometimes it's a little embarrassing to admit what you don't know,
Yes.
Especially when you're walking into the professional world and everyone else is talking about stock markets or cryptocurrency, and you're just like, no one ever told me about any of those things.
What is that?
Right? You can start to teach yourself those things online. Like I take classes via Coursera in my spare time to learn stuff that I didn't know, and having access to all of that information is so important. And the internet just sort of lays it out there for you in your spare time, not when you're supposed to be building something.
Exactly. And we've talked about how you're supposed to, create those lines, right?
Yeah.
Of spare time, work time, and I like your definition of a to-do list and a to-do list because I think sometimes we feel defeated when we don't complete everything on the to-do list. But if you look at your to-do list and you see the things you have accomplished, I think it re-energizes.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that too.
Another thing I do is a timesheet. Because some tasks you're just not going to finish soon, right? Because they're big tasks, right? So sometimes I just count the hours that I've worked. And so I get up in the morning, I'm like, all right, how many hours do I want today? I'm like, okay, I want 7 hours working. So I set the timer. And when I text someone back, I pause the timer. When I go to the restroom, I pause the timer. So at the end of the day, I'm like, all right, this is my 7 hours, right? So I put the time in, like I did the work. And sometimes, it's work that has to be undone later, right? But it's the thinking process that you had to do to get there. So if you can't actually put a thing on the list besides thinking, right? You can at least say, all right, for the past week, like I got 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours. And on my Excel spreadsheet, I put the date, I put how many hours I did, whether I met my task or didn't meet my task, and what I was working on. And it's also super awesome to find out how long it takes you to do things.
Exactly.
Because I just go to Excel and I highlight all of the things that were the same topic, and I'm like, okay, if I've done all the research and I'm ready to write, it takes me about 24 hours to write a new essay. So then I can go to my calendar and be like, okay, when can I block out like 24 hours to actually do this thing? If I do 4 hours a day for this many days, then it just helps you know how productive you can be, how much time it takes to do things, and it allows you to reward yourself even if you haven't finished something, if you put your time in.
Exactly. And it helps you become, because you're super organized.
Yeah. To a fault.
It's good though, because like you said, setting a time frame, because that, I think for entrepreneurs, a lot of times it's hard to figure out how much time they put into something.
Yeah.
So like you said, so if you have a deadline that you have to meet, you have an engagement on the 22nd, and you have to have an outline or a complete presentation for that. If you can't go back and see how long it's going to take you to get to that point, you might start out the day before and then be stressed out because you are up 24 hours because you have to finish it when you didn't realize this is a 24-hour project and I need to do it in small incremental pieces so that I get to that place where it's finished before I have to head out to where I'm going.
Yeah, and contractors get paid by the hour. So why shouldn't you know how many hours you spend as an entrepreneur?
Exactly.
And if someone wants to consult with you, then you know how many hours it takes to do that kind of work. If you're a writer, if you're a photographer, it's always like, how much do I charge? How many hours? But you can show people. Now you know.
Right.
It takes X amount of hours. This is how much it takes to get to this product, and that's why it costs what it costs.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, and it helps make the price you pay official.
Yeah, it does.
It does. Like it. We are learning so much from you. I'm going to ask you this right now before we go any further. Will you come back?
Absolutely.
Because you have a book that's out that I really want to talk about, and I know it would take more time than we have in this session. But please tell us the name of your book.
So the book is titled Rap and Religion, Understanding the Gangsta's God.
Love it. So
Yeah.
we have to talk about that. In fact, my sound engineer, when you said it, he completely turned around.
It's like, wait, what?
He's like, what? Yes, that's
Yes.
going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, let's totally do that. In the meantime, listeners, if you want to read it before I come back,
Definitely.
it's on Amazon.
Definitely. Yes. And so tell us everywhere we can find that book so we can read it before you come back, and then we can seriously discuss it.
Yes, it's on Amazon. Just search Rap and Religion. You can get yourself a copy, and
Okay.
yeah, then we'll be good to go.
Love it.
And I
Love
always,
it.
if you run into me on the streets, I always have some in my trunk.
That's cool.
Old school.
Old school.